Sleeping Beauty. Long, long ago, there lived a king and a queen. Now their greatest wish was to have a child, and every day they sighed, "Oh, if only we had a child." But no child came to them. Well, one day, while the queen was bathing, a frog popped up out of the water and spoke to her. "Before the year is out, you will bring a beautiful baby girl into the world." And you know, what the frog said came true. After a few months, the queen bore a baby girl. Oh, and she was so beautiful. The king was beside himself with joy, and he threw a great feast to celebrate. They invited all their friends, all their relatives, everyone they knew, and there was eating and drinking and music and dance. Oh, and I forgot to say, they also invited the wise women in the land. Now, there were 13 wise women in the land, but the king only had 12 golden dishes to serve them with, so one of them had to stay home. Well, like I said, they had a great party and celebrated, and after the party, it was time for the presents, and each of the wise women wished the girl something special. One wished her beauty, the other one kindness, the other one riches, and so on. Everything, anything that the heart could wish for. But just as the 11th wise woman had finished giving her gift, the 13th showed up, the one who hadn't been invited to the feast, and she was angry and she wanted revenge. And without speaking a word to anyone, she cried, "Mark my words. When the king's daughter reaches her 15th year, she will prick her finger on a spindle and fall down dead." And she went off again as suddenly as she had come. Well, everyone was horrified. But the 12th wise woman had not yet given her gift. And she said, "I can't take away the curse of the 13th, but I can soften it. The girl will not die, but she will fall asleep for 100 years. Now, the king was afraid for his daughter and angry, and to protect her, he ordered that every spindle in the land be burned. Well, you know what a spindle is, don't you? That's a sharp piece of metal that they use in spinning wool. And the girl grew up to be just as kind and virtuous and lovely as the wise women had wished, and everyone fell in love with her. The years flew by, and finally she reached her 15th birthday. Now on this day, the king and the queen had gone out. The girl was alone in the castle, and she thought to herself, "Oh, I'm going to explore," because there were parts of the castle that she had never seen before. And so she went off and looked in every nook and cranny. Finally, she came to an old stone tower that she'd never been in before. And she began to climb the spiral stone staircase step by step until she came to a small wooden door. And in the door there was a rusty key. She turned the key, the door opened, and there she saw an old woman sitting spinning flax. "Oh, what are you doing?" "I'm spinning," said the old woman. "Oh, and what's that funny thing spinning around?" said the girl, and she grabbed hold of the spindle and pricked her finger. And in that moment, the prediction came true. She fell on the bed and fell into a deep sleep. And this sleepiness spread through the whole castle. The king and the queen, who had just come home, fell asleep with all their courtiers. The horses and the hounds in the courtyard dropped off to sleep. The doves on the roof tucked their heads under their wings and snoozed. The flies on the wall in the castle stopped buzzing and took a nap. And the fire that was burning in the grate died down. And so the roasties that were sizzling in the pan stopped cooking. And the cook, who was just about to give the kitchen boy a clip around the ear for spilling something, he let him go. And a great hedge of thorns grew up around the castle. It grew so high that you couldn't see the castle anymore. Even the flags on the roof of the castle were hidden from view. Well, the story of the Sleeping Beauty spread throughout the land. And many young princes came to try their luck to see the Sleeping Beauty. And they tried to cut their way through the hedge of thorns, but the thorns were so big that they snapped together, and then the princes died a horrible death. After many, many years, another brave young prince came into the land, and he heard an old man telling a story. Well, they do say that there is a castle, and in this castle there is a young woman they call the Sleeping Beauty, and she's been sleeping there with the king and the queen and all their courtiers for 100 years, so they do say. And many young princes have come and tried to free them, but all have died a miserable death. Ah, I'm not afraid. I want to see this Sleeping Beauty, said the young prince. No, no, don't try it. You will certainly die. But the young man ignored the old man and went off to find the hedge. Well, the 100 years were over, and it was time for the Sleeping Beauty to wake up. As the young man came to the hedge, it turned into giant, beautiful flowers, and they all went aside to let him pass and then came together again behind him. The young man walked on into the courtyard, and there he saw the horses and the hounds asleep. He looked up to the roof and saw the doves with their heads tucked under their wings. He came into the castle and saw the flies on the wall, and the cook about to give the boy a hit on the head. And then he came into the throne room and saw the king and the queen and all the courtiers asleep. The king and the queen were sitting on their thrones snoring. The young man walked on, and he came to the old stone tower, and he walked up the spiral staircase, step by step, until he came to the small wooden door. He turned the key and opened the door, and there he saw lying on the bed the Sleeping Beauty. He was enchanted by her beauty and couldn't take his eyes off her. And boldly, he leant down and gave her a kiss. Well, in that moment, the Sleeping Beauty opened her eyes, woke up, and smiled at the prince. And together they went down into the throne room, and there the king and the queen and all the courtiers were just waking up, and they all stretched and yawned and all stared at each other. The horses and the hounds in the courtyard jumped up and ran off. The doves on the roof flew off into the fields. The flies on the wall started buzzing again. The roasties started sizzling in the pan as the fire sprang to life again. And the cook gave the kitchen boy a clip around the ear that made him yell. And of course, the prince and Sleeping Beauty had a fantastic wedding and lived together happily to the end of their days.